In a previous video, Kevin and I showed and demonstrated the product screen. In this video, we're going to demonstrate exporting and importing of products. When you're setting up your products and you need to import mass data, Inflow allows you to do that with spreadsheets and also with e-commerce platforms like WooCommerce and Shopify. You can import products in mass. Kevin's going to show us how to export the product list that includes the product that we created on the last video. And then we're going to review those fields. So yeah, Kevin, take it away, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Lance. And yeah, so one thing, I commonly like to sort of refer to as a hack is when you're trying to import data into Inflow, is you're going to have an Excel spread, or sorry, a CSV file that probably has your headers that you're used to seeing. But obviously our system is going to look for specific headers to help you auto map. And what I recommend is create a product record that you're looking to import in Inflow, just one, and then export that and reuse our headers on your file.
So in the last video, we created the product. So we're ready for that. So yeah, now we're ready to go ahead and export.
Yeah, so you're going to come to what I'm told is the hamburger icon here and come down to the bottom, and you have the options of import and export. We're going to export first, have a look at that, and then we're going to revisit the import button here. So I click export. You choose which type of data you want to export. And in this case, we're going to do product details. We're going to do product details. We'll export that. And then that's going to create a file for me, which I'm going to open. And whether you're using Numbers or Google Sheets or Excel, CSV files are available and is an easily made file extension that you can get out of any of those. So in here, I've done this import, and this has taken everything off of our product record. So if I expand this out, we have product name, we have our SKU, we have our category. Now, one thing I do want to point out with category is we have our main category and subcategory. Those are all going to be in one column. So you want to put this product into its, I guess, lowest or most sorted category in that case. And then here
so you don't need the parent category in that?
Correct. You just want the child, or I guess what the lowest level on that within that category is for that item.
And it's probably good to mention that whether or not you can or cannot create categories by just plugging a new one in right there in the import, that'll probably give an error message, right?
No, you can import new categories. The only thing it doesn't do is you don't create a hierarchy with that. So in my last example, or in the last video, we made a bicycle product. If I had a main category that was bicycle, and then I had subcategories such as helmets and wheels and seats, those would just import as a main category. And within Inflow, I would sort those and organize those into their proper tree format or tree structure later on.
So I can just put a new category in there that's not in yet, right there on that field, and it'll import without error and create a new one. But that might not be ideal because the system doesn't know which hierarchy or parent category it goes with, if they're even using hierarchy, if you're even using hierarchy. Okay. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And then type. Yeah. So this is where you're going to put stock product, non-stock product. And there is a little bit of like service. And with serialized products, it's going to be a stock product, but just note that you're going to set this column, which is track serials. If you're doing that, you're going to set that to true instead of false.
Nice. And I'm sure that has to match perfectly with the required field, right? Under column D. Yeah.
Exactly. Our assumption though is if you don't import a file with an item type or track serials on, our default assumption is that you want to import it as a stock product that's non-serialized. So if you don't have serial numbers or you don't have any other type of product, just the things that you sell, you don't even need to have that column.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
You got
We
serial prefix and serial. What are those next two fields?
next number and suffix. So essentially, if you have serialized products and you want to have a static prefix, so in the last video, I showed you looking up the heart rate monitor serial number, and its prefix is HRM, just something I made up that stands for heart rate monitor. And then it was followed by 1001. So in that case, I'd put HRM here. That's going to be static for that particular product. And then the next number is where I want that serialization to start. So
I like it.
1001, the next one that I create is going to be 1002.
You could have a prefix or a suffix with the serial number. That's great.
Exactly. And a lot of companies will do that to separate out. The prefix might be the month it was manufactured, and then the suffix is the plant that it was manufactured in for like larger customers that have multiple manufacturing plants, let's say.
Nice.
And then we have description.
That's self-explanatory.
Yeah. No need to describe that one. We have default unit price. So when you set up your pricing schemes, you're going to have a default price. And that's going to be in the event a customer doesn't have a pricing scheme assigned to them. We're just going to say, hey, this is our default price. Usually it's your highest price. So that way you don't run into, accidentally selling someone at, too low a price or something like that, or something that's reserved for a customer with a big spend.
Right.
Fixed markup, this populated, but if you're going the fixed markup approach of your items, you would fill out this column with the percentage that you want it to mark up. And then you would set is fixed markup to true. Here in North America, we don't deal with a lot of having tax inclusive pricing, but Inflow does support VAT or tax inclusive pricing. So again, you would just set that it's tax inclusive price here.
Okay.
And then these are my pricing tiers. So my default price is MSRP. So that's covered under the default price column. But I also have a clearance price. I have a cost or employee price. In my system, I have euro prices. We have clients that sell in multiple currencies. And then I have different tiers or a special customer price. And then I also have my cost column here. This cost is the cost of my product. And Lance, you brought something up. So this cost is not necessarily the same as my vendor price, because this cost could also be from a manufactured work order where I'm adding operational costs to that, and that's going to increase my goods. And you'll look over here and you see that we have this column vendor price.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So just one thing to note, but bit niche. And then if there's a special tax rate associated with this product, where I am, for example, there's a lower tax rate on children's books than there is on general services. So you'd set up that has a special tax rate for that product here.
Yeah.
The last vendor, the vendor product code, your vendor price, barcode. And again, don't worry if you don't have a barcode on your import file, we can generate those for you automatically. And if there are a couple things that do have barcodes, you can override it and change it to what the actual barcode is of that product later.
Now, is there some place like on your website or in the software that we can go to see instructions on all this that we're reviewing in this video right now?
Yeah, we have a great learning center. It's available on our website under the support tab. It's got tons of articles on this and a lot more. I believe they also have some sample import files if you want to have a look at it. And we also have a YouTube channel as well that you can look at. And I believe there is a webinar about importing, and we should have some other informational videos about importing as well, and other features of Inflow.
Yeah, because my question that I was thinking of that made me think of asking that is what columns are required?
Yeah. So really, when you're importing, if you just want a super sleek and simple import, there's really 3 columns that you need to create a product in Inflow. You need product name, you need category, and then you need item type. Realistically, because if everything's going to be a stocked product, you don't even need the item type to be imported. You could have, in theory, just the product name and category. Otherwise, if you have a default category, we'll assign that to a product. If you're just starting with a fresh database, the default category is called default category. So it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to miss when you look at it and you're sorting through your products and you're wondering why is everything in this default category.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically product name, category, and item type are really the 3 columns that you need.
So did we cover all the columns here? Get them all?
So not, I mean, most of these, so basically from brand to compatible is a custom, are the custom fields I've established. You can
Okay.
have up to 10 on your product record. Is active, if you're importing products for historical context and you don't sell them anymore, maybe there's a new version or it's a product you don't carry, you would just set that to false for that particular product. Otherwise, we import it with the assumption that they are in fact active and something you're looking to sell. And combine quantity buildable, that's a setting in manufacturing for your bundles and kits. So if you have auto manufacturing turned on for that product, you would set that to true or false accordingly.
And what's
And
that? The auto manufacturing, what does that do?
yeah, so
That's turned.
it's how we handle or look at handling bundles or kits. So let's say I sell a bike safety package that's, a helmet, reflective armband, a reflective vest, and, safety glasses or something. Normally, I sell those parts individually. I don't necessarily keep that kit ready to go on the shelf, but if someone orders it, I'll put it together for them. So we're going to automatically create that bill of materials that reduces your inventory of the individual components and convert that into your finished good that is that kit, so you don't have to take that step.
Okay. Yeah, this kind of brings up another good point. When you're setting up your inventory management software, it's good to just put a few products in there, maybe 1 or 2 bills of material, walk through your entire workflow and see if you have all the settings the way that you want and it's behaving the way you want it to behave before you mass import, right? Do a little bit of testing first before you mass import. It's always a good idea. So, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's everything, right? I think we got all of the fields.
Yeah, and then you can just set up your units of measure and weight here. That's
Oh, it wasn't everything. Sorry. We
yeah,
missed the
that's okay.
units of measure and weight. Okay.
Yeah, and those are just as we set it up, right? Like my sales unit of measure,
Yep.
so pair, units, eaches, whatever you want to call it, and then sales, basically 1-to-1, and then your purchasing unit of measure as well. So I buy it by 1 box, and if there are changes in it, it'll show up here. So in this case, I buy 1 box, and it gives me 10 pairs. So that's all that's saying. So just like how we had it set up before, that's how you import, or these are the columns that you use to import that.
And then does your packing list, pick tickets, shipping invoice, those types of reports use these fields? What reports use the product weight and dimensions?
Yeah, so there's a couple different reports that we can do it, but where ultimately, or where the most I find, or the most important thing with weight is our integration with EasyPost for shipping. If you put in the weights of all of your products, we're going to auto calculate the weight of that package that you're sending out to get what your rate is from your shipper, or from the shipper that you use.
Okay. Nice. I think that pretty much covers it. This is a .csv file. Can you import using any other type of spreadsheet besides .csv?
No, it does have to be in the CSV format, and you should be able to save just about any file as a CSV, just following the save as file.
Yeah.
Save as, and then selecting from the drop down CSV UTF-8.
Yeah.
or just CSV files.
Or yeah, I guess either one of those would do. I think I've had problems with the UTF-8, but the CSV down below, I've had
Mhm.
fewer problems with that one.
Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, let's go ahead and save it and import it.
yeah. So saved already downloaded, so we don't really need to save this, but we would save that. And when it comes time to importing, similar, you come up to the icon, the hamburger icon on the home page, scroll down to the bottom, click import. It's going to ask you the data type that you want to import here. So these are all your import options that you have available to you, but we're going to go with product details. And one common question I get asked about importing is, hey, I want to import my stock levels, but I imported my product details and I didn't see it. For us, those are two separate imports. You'll import your product details and then you'll import your stock levels.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
that gives you a little bit more organization, especially if you are a business that has multiple locations where you want to establish those sub locations through an import rather than hand typing them all into the system.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that they can import new products and the quantity together, but no,
Mhm.
those are
Yeah.
separate imports.
Yeah. And yeah, so once you select the file type that you're looking to import, and again, our Learning Center goes into details of each of those imports or most of them and what they look like and kind of how you get there. You come in and you click, oh, and we also have this handy download product import template if you want to do that as well, because we always recommend creating or using our headers on your file so that we will auto map it for you. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go drag and drop, or I can click here and go through the file tree and select those items. So this is the product details list we were just working on. I'll hit next. And you can see that it's already sort of giving me a snippet of data. And this is why, I say taking and using our headers is awesome. Because if I come in here, if we know what we're looking for and it matches the name, we're going to pull that in here and make your life pretty easy. If you just have one location and you don't have sub locations associated with that, you can sneak your quantity onto here. Generally, when I do it or I help customers, I do it in two separate imports. I like that separation a little bit. It helps people get in the right mindset about what they're importing. And one important note about this auto mapping is we don't automatically import your cost of the product. We don't automatically map to that. You have to manually map that. And that's just a control from our point so that you don't accidentally override your product cost when you're doing an import to say bulk update descriptions or bulk update a custom field or change a price.
Because if
So
you
yeah.
change the cost right there, that'll create a journal entry, an accounting transaction, an adjustment,
Mhm.
right? Like that's going
Yeah.
to affect your books. So that's a nice little fail safe. I call it
Yeah.
making the software dummy proof. We want dummy proof features to help us to prevent us from making mistakes. And I'm glad you mentioned this because I was going to say right about this time is when people start getting nervous before
Yeah.
they hit that import button. What's going to happen? And I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you, what if they do screw up in mass? And
Mhm.
I don't know. Who knows? There's a million things people can do, right? To screw up the software in mass. Do you have like timestamps, backup of accounts that they can revert to, and any fail-safe things like that to say, oh, you screwed up, but you can take it back?
Yeah. So I would say in that case, you'd reach out to our support team. They can look into it and see if we have a previous instance that we can call and restore to in the system. It's not something that the user, would automatically have access to from your account. You can, if it's just you import the product details. And what commonly happens is, or what commonly I see happen is people will import a file and select the wrong column, or they're using an old one and now the product name is not what they're looking for. So you have the option from your account to just reset everything and start from a fresh data if that's something you want to do as well.
And another common question I get from people is, Will this create duplicate products? Because the products are already in there.
Mhm. As long as the product name matches, and this is an important point I should highlight, is with our imports and in Inflow in general, we typically look to the product name as our unique key. So as long as the product name is the same, we're not going to create a duplicate product. If you change the product name, that can create a duplicate product. Or if you misspell it because you're like me and you have fat fingers when you're typing on the keyboard, that can also happen. I will also highlight two common failures that I see customers experience when they're trying to import. The first is in your file, you have separations between lines. Commonly, these are like their categories, and you don't take it out. We like to see your header as a single row with each of the names we're looking for or what you're looking to import. And then we also have from there, it'll just be records right down all the way to the bottom without line breaks.
Yeah. And I've got
And
another
then,
question along this lines.
yeah.
Oftentimes, when I help companies with their implementation projects,
Mhm.
we like to drum up a sandbox. We like to create a
Mhm.
sandbox account first,
Mhm.
get all the data in there. And I look at the list type data as live, but the transactional type data as practice, not live, right?
Yeah.
So when you're setting up the file for the first time, focus on getting it right.
Mhm.
Don't have dummy products and dummy costs and dummy prices. Like get it right. Get your correct vendors, correct customers, because then what my hope is, and I'll ask you this, Kevin, because this is the way I like to do it. After we get the file set up and tested and all that, and we go through training and practice and we clean up the data, make sure it's reliable, good bills of material and products and prices and locations. And then it's really nice to just click a magic button to wipe out all the practice transactions and then start entering in live sales orders, live purchase orders after we've
Mhm.
wiped out the practice sales orders and purchase orders. Can you speak to that? Does Inflow have anything like that?
We don't have anything like that. Sort of when you reset your database, it's a firm reset, with the exception of some of the settings you've established in the account. But the nice thing is because we have the ability to export those files, if your product details are correct, export the file and then just re-import it when you get your new instance going.
Yeah. So if you don't have the magic button, what I would do then is drum up two instances.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have a practice instance when you first start using Inflow. Just look at it as this is our sandbox. The only
Mhm.
thing we need to get right is the list type data. And then
Mhm.
let's push all kinds of practice transactions through. And then when you're ready to go live and you feel comfortable that you've learned the software, have their support team drum up another instance of Inflow, export all of your list type data from your sandbox, import your list type data into your live, and then import live quantities, right? And then enter in live sales orders and purchase orders, and then connect it to the live QuickBooks account. I think that's how I would do it.
Yeah.
So
And that's
cool.
super
All
useful
right.
to the client as well. And the other thing I'll point out is just make sure, do a quick scan that you don't have any duplicate product names, because either that will just update the existing record, duplicate product names within the same file, because you're just going to be overwriting the data that you're importing, or it can sometimes cause an import to fail. So it will update the record to whatever is in that column. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes I see when I'm assisting someone that they'll have duplicate product names in the system. We like to have a unique product name for each. Um, Another thing I want to highlight with costs, because we're just talking about it, and especially the transactional data, is it's easy for me to come in here. I'm going to look up costs. This is a pricing scheme we established, so you might not see that specific one in your import file, but in mine it exists. So I select cost. Now, if you're using moving average or manual costing as your costing method in Inflow, you can import cost at this step. If you're using FIFO or LIFO for your costing methods, your import is going to be a little bit different. You're not going to establish your cost at this stage. That cost is going to be established through the purchase orders you import, as well as the work orders that you import as well. That's a little bit more technical and something you can work on as you're implementing it, but it's just something to note if you're doing this on your own right now.
Can they import FIFO costing layers from the inventory quantities import?
No, it has to be established through a PO. And whether that's kind of like an initialization PO that you import with all the products and costs, but you're not going to pay that, it's to a vendor you're never going to pay. That would be, it's that way, or you import the actual most recent purchase orders and then corresponding sales orders to go with it.
Okay, good clarification. All
Yeah.
right, well, should we hit that yellow import button?
Yeah, so I'll hit that import button and essentially it'll say your import's in progress. And you'll eventually get an email that says, hey, we completed your import. If there were exceptions, it'll sometimes highlight what lines those exceptions are on. If it fails right away, you'll get an email that says, hey, we could not import your file. Perhaps it was too large and you need to break it down, or you had like line breaks in it, or it wasn't a CSV file or anything like that. We would inform you that, hey, your import failed.
Yeah, I would expect to see some sort of progress bar across the screen right now, or spinning
So
wheel or something.
So you do get that, but because I'm importing a very small file and it's all data that's already in there because we've established it, it's not going to give me that. It will say like, hey, we're importing your data. This will take, a few minutes to a few hours. Like anything, when you're moving data, it's going to depend on how much data you're moving for us to get that created and written.
Does Inflow have any limitations on the number of products you can have in the system? What's uh, what's the most you've seen someone have in Inflow as far as product count goes?
Gosh. So to answer the first part of that question, there's no limit on the number of items that you have in Inflow. Like we're not going to stop you from doing that. Just like with anything, if you're querying a million line items of products in a report, that takes a long time. So I'd say maybe narrow it down. But yeah, we definitely have clients with tens or hundreds of thousands of parts.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, not to like the scale of like close to a million, but definitely we have clients in there that do have large a large number of SKUs.
And are they experiencing any kind of frustration or slowness or anything? Or is it working okay with hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, I don't typically see that side of things, but generally when you have a lot of SKUs, typically the slowdowns that we see are when you're pulling a bunch of data or trying to export something, importing, and also on importing. Generally, the amount of lines you can import in a single go is smaller than that, so you may have to break up the part list.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen that with other software programs too.
yeah. Um,
So the export, if you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of products, can you filter the export to just export one category at a time? Or is the export sort of an all or nothing thing and you just have to wait for it to be done 5 hours later or something?
yeah, the export is an all or nothing thing.
Okay. But then the
You don't have
import, you
filtering.
can break it up and say, hey, let's just import 10,000 at a time or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe if I recall correctly, I've tested it up to about the 20,000 line mark. That may change in the future. But kind of I've seen, about 20,000 you can, again, depending on how many columns you have and everything else, you can do that. It's just going to take a little bit more time to import than say my 200 line file that we just did.
Well, in projects I've been involved in with other software programs with large imports, as I've found it helpful to shrink the import down to 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 lines anyways, because you're going to wait for 5-10 minutes just to get an error message.
Yeah.
So sure, the software can handle the volume of import, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily the smartest thing to do, because if you get these error messages that you have to fish through, or you swim through, then it's better to do a smaller amount of import.
Yeah, and that's another great point, Lance, is some people will do that and they take the like set it and forget it approach and just kind of, it's 4:50, they're about to go home, they click the import button and they walk away because they're not using Inflow. So sometimes people will also like kind of set that import to happen near the end of the day and get that going.
Yeah.
So that when they come back on Monday and everything went well, or the next day, then that data should be imported.
Nice.
Yeah, and with like while it's importing, you can look at, and like we could go in and we could check our product list to see that things are being imported. Just know it's not instantaneous. It will like import over time, and your list would continue to grow.
Cool. So you can kind of see the effects of your import in real time from this screen. That's nice. Well, hopefully you found this video helpful. Comment below if you have any questions. And people are monitoring the comments and responding to them, so you'll get answers. And feel free to reach out to Inflow support for questions. If you want a consultant's perspective and you have questions that apply more to implementation or accounting or business workflow, reach out to us. And be sure to subscribe and take a look at the entire playlist for both setup and usage. And we always like to feed our ego and see how many likes we can get. So if you want to give us a thank you, click that like button.